Welcome back to Purrfect Takes. I'm your host, Stephen Patton, joined as always by my co-host and dear friend, Jacob LaQuire. We have a bunch of stuff to get into with this preview episode today, and it's actually going to start with some news from around the NFL. Anthony Richardson, who was previously benched for Joe Flacco, I believe the past 2 games, was reinstated as the quarterback for the rest of the season. Or no ifs, ands, or obviously, injuries could play a role or factor down the stretch, but Shane Steichen showed support for his quarterback who has struggled early on. Now, obviously, there were some issues with him pulling himself off for a play or two because he was tired, and you just can't do that as a professional. And I think he's learned that lesson the hard way over the past couple of weeks, and I think he's gained the respect of his teammates and coaches again. The question is, why aren't we seeing that in Carolina?
Well, I think in the case with Endy, for me, I think Irsay had to have sent some word down because Joe Flacco did not play well the past couple of weeks. While he didn't have a ton of like short misses or anything, he didn't make any magic happen like Anthony Richardson can with his legs and his arms. So I can see why Steichen kind of went back and said, all right, you learned your lesson, Anthony. We're going with you for the rest of the year. Like you said, no ifs, ands, or buts about it, unless obviously injuries or maybe he gets tired again for a play. Who knows? But I think the thing with Dave Canales and Bryce is people on Twitter, people on Panthers Twitter in particular, are speculating that this might be a way to maybe motivate Bryce Young to say like, oh, my job isn't secure. You know, he hasn't named anybody the starter yet. Maybe I need to lock in and keep my head down during practice this week. I don't really buy that. I think he has already told whoever the starter is that they're starting. He's just not revealing it to the media for whatever reason. At this point, he might just be messing with Panthers fans and with the media in there because every week we know what the question's going to be. And he has the same answer ever since Bryce has been inserted back into the starting lineup. My hesitance, or I guess a slight annoyance with him doing this, is when Andy Dalton was in there, it was always, this is Andy's team, no matter what, right? Even after Andy Dalton started to play quite poorly, even after the Washington game, that following that game and that Monday, it was Andy's team up until he hurt his thumb in the car accident that I think it was a Tuesday when that happened. So I guess he could be a little more proactive in saying, hey, you know, this is Bryce's team now. He's shown us something. He did say something like that following the game versus the Giants. He said Bryce made a statement. But, yeah, still no commitment. I honestly don't think throughout the rest of the year we're going to get one in those media pressures, even if he's already chosen in his mind that Bryce is going to start the rest of the season. And at this point, it's just whatever. Like, you can't really get mad at it anymore. Otherwise, you're just looking for stuff to get mad at during the midst of a 2-game win streak, I might add.
Yeah, no, but that's the issue, is that you've seen something from Bryce Young, the guy that you came over, said that you were excited to work with, the guy that everybody fell in love with from a tape and interview standpoint in the draft process. And then 2 weeks into it, you ditch the game plan. You instate Andy Dalton as the guy. You're adamant that this is Andy Dalton's team. And then you're just when Bryce Young is starting to show some life, actually shows a better split over the past couple games than Andy Dalton did over previous 2 or 3 games as the starter. So that's where I kind of get into on film that makes them hesitant. And then the other thing is that one of the Panthers reporters, Joseph Person, with I believe it's the Charlotte Observer. No, is he with the Charlotte Observer?
He's the Athletic.
The Athletic, yes. It's Mike Kay, who's been on with us. He's with the Charlotte Observer. So getting the 2 publications mixed up, but Person came out and pretty much said, as kind of like a prediction before the end of the season, is that Andy Dalton's going to start another game. You go up against, coming out of the bye, the Chiefs, which have a good defense under Steve Spagnuolo. Then you play the Buccaneers, and Bryce Young did not look good against them in the season finale last year. And then you play the Eagles, and that's a daunting stretch. So I am very curious, as a beat reporter that is very close to the team, speculating that Andy Dalton could return, and it's all based on Bryce Young continuing to keep up this performance, and that Canales so far still does not believe that he's the guy.
Yeah, for me, like I know I've been quite adamant that you need to give this new regime like time for them to build stuff. But playing or starting Andy Dalton again for any reason other than injury would just be like a huge red flag for me. I would almost be calling for Canales to be fired because there's just no reason to, right? Bryce has been better with the younger players. So if you're evaluating the young offensive weapons, keep Bryce out there. Bryce is finally showing something in your offense over the past 2 weeks. So to see your offense progress versus not very weak defenses, I should say. The Giants secondary isn't great, but their front is deadly. They still lead the league in sacks. The Saints defense as a whole is pretty good, even though they were missing a couple of corners that day. The Broncos defense is the best in the league from an EPA standpoint at the time when we had played them. So not easy defenses by any means, like Andy Dalton got with the Raiders, with the Bengals, with the Falcons, with the Commanders, and he struggled with two of those teams. So for me, other than like, I guess Andy Dalton's your best friend or something, like he comes to the cookout or something, there's just no reason to be playing him other than injury from here on out because, look, quite frankly, there's just no upside. Like, even if you want to win more games, Bryce gives you a better chance now. He's shown that over the past couple weeks, especially when you let him throw the ball down the field. So, yeah, I don't really get it.
Yeah, no, it's definitely perplexing. I think what Shane Steichen did in showing his support for the young quarterback that they are trying to develop, who had very few games in college, has had few snaps at the professional level, and he shown glimpses and flashes that if he can work on some of the mechanics, become more accurate. Some of what he does in terms of avoiding sacks in the pocket, he's got a solid pressure to sack ratio, and his ability to create is pretty league average at this point. And we've seen the big throws. I mean, that Alec Pierce throw is still probably one of the best throws of the year. And that just goes to show you that if he can rein it in some more, perfect his craft, there's no reason why he couldn't have a Josh Allen jump because of his athletic traits and his ability to be a special player on the field. So that's all I wanted to see from Canales was support of the quarterback that obviously this team has invested a ton in. And unfortunately, just that verbal confirmation has not been there. And maybe if he performs really well against the Chiefs coming out of the bye, he earns himself the starting gig the rest of the year. So we'll see, fingers crossed. But I think that's a good segue into our Panthers section. Since this is the bye week, we don't have a game to preview for this coming Sunday. We should break down the remaining games of the schedule, kind of give our thoughts about the matchups and a potential record at the end of the year that we see the Panthers achieving. I know we thought around 5 or 6 wins to start the year. I think the way the schedule breaks, we could find a couple more wins and end up with 5 or 6 wins, which I think, considering how this season started, would be a victory.
For sure. I think even before the season, if you would have said 5 or 6 wins is something that would be good for the team, you'd be like, oh, yeah, that's a good progression, right? More than double, maybe even triple the wins from last year. And then the start of the year looked really rough, but we were able to pull off 2 wins going into the bye. So I completely agree with you. Our remaining schedule, obviously, after this week, no bye weeks. It's a game every week. Week 12 is going to be against Kansas City here. Week 13 against Tampa here. Then we go to Philly. We host Dallas. We host Arizona. And then we end the year going to 2 division rivals in the Bucks and finally the Falcons. The most recent one, or the upcoming one, the game versus the Chiefs. I think that's going to be really interesting. Now, well, I'm not going to go out here and tell you we're going to beat the Chiefs, all right? They're undefeated for a reason. They still have Patrick Mahomes, who even in a down year is still like QB 10 in the league. And across like the spectrum of QB history, it's still above average. So it's hard to play against Mahomes. He knows what to do. We talk about how Caleb Williams doesn't know where to scramble. Mahomes is a master at that. And our front, I think, is going to struggle against him. Their defense is still stout. Spagnuolo knows what he's doing. So this will not be a walk in the park by any means. But we have seen the cracks start to form with the Chiefs, right? Think back to 2 weeks ago on it was Monday Night Football, right? With the Buccaneers. They had to go to overtime to get the victory there. And quite frankly, they should have lost in regulation because Todd Bowles should have gone for 2, or they should have won in regulation, but they ended up going to overtime. And then this past week versus the Broncos, they needed a blocked field goal to beat them. And what was that game? Still 16-14, right? So it's not like they put up a ton of points or anything. Now they play the 8-2 Bills this week, who are playing about as good football as any team in the league right now. I think we're going to see a Kansas City team this week that's going to give us a good marker of what to expect next week, because we've gotten some tough, gritty wins recently, just like the Chiefs have. And if Mahomes can make some mistakes and our offensive line can do well against their defensive line, I think we have a chance to be competitive. I'm not going to say it's a win.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I know a lot of people point to the fact that the Chiefs have won a lot of close games, but some of it's in the attention to detail that the team has shown. I mean, that special teams play on the block, the ball is on the right hash, and who's Pat McAfee? There we go. I was about to say Johnny Unitas, another famous Colts player, but Pat McAfee broke down that special teams play. And because it's on the right hash, the kicker is going to have to kick it towards the left to get it to go through the uprights. They blow up the left side of the line. And one of the linemen, I'm guessing the Chiefs special teams coordinator had seen some stuff on film, did not have proper blocking stance for the field goal unit. And so they were able to blow up that side of the line, get a block on the field goal, and end the game. And again, the Chiefs, because they are so good all the way down from the front office and coaching staff down to their roster at just knowing what they're supposed to do to eke out the win. I mean, this is a team that I think is still or close to first in success rate on offense, because they know how to get enough yards to keep converting downs and moving the ball down. So I don't want to take anything away from them. I think from a roster standpoint, where the Giants and Saints had a lot more holes and flaws, the Chiefs are a more complete team. And I think as they start to get DeAndre Hopkins kind of back in the rhythm in that offense with that trade kind of mid-season, this is a team that I think could really blow the doors off us and be more reminiscent of some of the bad losses we took at the beginning of the year. And I think it just comes down to a talent disparity and obviously having superior coaches. And we just don't have enough firepower, I think, in Carolina to keep up.
Well, I think Andy Reid and Dave Canales are about equal, as coaches. I know you probably share that sentiment as well. They're going to be getting Isaiah Pacheco back, not versus the Bills. They took him off IR, but Andy Reid said they're going to ramp him up. So we might see him for that game, but they might see Jonathan Brooks from our end. They might see Adam Thielen back. So hopefully hopefully the Chiefs don't, but hopefully we get some reinforcements for that game to kind of help out the offense there and put up some points. The following week, we host Tampa Bay. They might get a reinforcement back in Mike Evans. I know it was supposed to be, I think, 4 weeks at least when he that he needed to take off before he came back. I think their bye week is week 12, so it would be the week before we play them. So if he's able to come back, Mike Evans, that's going to be a really tough and important matchup versus J.C. Horn, because over the past 2-3 seasons, we've had some games against the Buccaneers where Mike Evans just it seems like we have a chance, and then Mike Evans just ends it. I'm thinking back to Steve Wilkes's I think it was the second to last game that year, right? We were vying for the playoffs. I think we were up 21-6 at one point. We could have beaten them and if we won that game, we were in the playoffs. We won the division. And then Tom Brady to Mike Evans twice down the right sideline ends that one. Last year, the first Buccaneers game we played, it was actually one of the rare times in the latter half of the year where we had a lead at some point in the game. I think it was Chuba Hubbard had a rushing touchdown. We went up 20-14. And then the very next play, Mike Evans, it was down the left side that time, 75-yard touchdown, snuffed out our lead instantly. So there's been a couple times the past few years that Mike Evans has really done us in. If he's back, J.C. Horn's going to need to stay all over him instead of having Dane Jackson on him or something, whatever Evero likes to do. I think that's going to be the key matchup in that game for the Bucs against us, because the Bucs are also going to be vying for winning the division, right? They're only 2 games behind the Falcons as it currently stands. So this is going to be a big one for them.
Yeah, no, this is a huge game for them. They don't want to lose it, obviously, to kind of keep a leg in the division standings so that they can vie for it. I think they lost both their games against the Falcons, so tiebreakers kind of stink there from that standpoint, and that means these wins are just as valuable for them. I will say, playing at home against maybe a team that doesn't have Mike Evans and Chris Godwin is kind of a good scenario, considering we only allowed them to score 10 points in the season finale last year, with, I think, a better constructed roster on both sides of the ball. So that being said, I definitely think this is a winnable game for the Panthers. I could see it being a scenario, and we'll get more into the finale against the Falcons here in a little bit. But I think there's a chance that the Panthers split with every one of their division rivals. And this is one of those victories that you might be able to pencil in if Mike Evans isn't 100%.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Their run game has certainly improved, and that's going to be an emphasis for us as we're a pretty poor run defense. But I don't think of their O-line as super stout, right? So if we can get DJ Wanham up and rolling, he already had a good game versus the Giants. If he can continue that versus the Chiefs, have a good game versus Tampa Bay, I think we'll be in pretty decent shape there, considering it's at home. It'll be an afternoon game. I think we're still in the black jerseys that game. So a lot of good vibes for that game. The following week, not so much. We're going to get a sneak peek of this team tonight on Thursday Night Football because we're going up to Philly, up to it's still called the Link, right? They haven't sold the name rights away or anything like Heinz Field did for whatever reason. But the Philadelphia Eagles, I know you're probably excited for that one. Like Philly's like your home away from home, your second team, what have you. That's going to be, I think, a rough one. I think that one more so than the Chiefs game, in my opinion, because the Eagles right now, I think, are playing their best football. They've won 5 in a row after starting the year 2-2, kind of iffy. Their offense is hitting on all cylinders now that Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown are healthy. Saquon is Saquon. He's going to be a struggle for us. And I think their defense is coming into their own with both the front and the young secondary that they have with Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, some of their young draft picks playing very well currently. So I think that's going to be probably the worst game that the Panthers have to face down the stretch of the rest of the schedule.
Oh, for sure. Where I said the Chiefs game might be a blowout, the fact that we at least get to play home, then they may not have a couple of their guys back healthy. I don't know if the Chiefs have like built a dynasty of fans across the nation where like you have the Cowboys.
The Swifties might show up for them though. You never know.
This is true. Travis Kelce being on the field and whatnot. So we'll see who shows up in attendance that game. But there are elements there where it's like, okay, maybe we keep it close because this is a team that has been lackluster, for lack of a better word. The Eagles, like you said, they're hitting their stride. Vic Fangio in my play caller rankings this week ranks first as a defensive play caller. The defense this time last year ranked 19th in EPA per play, which is expected points added. This year, they rank 6th. And between their defensive line, which has a ton of playmakers, and then the fact that they had Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean drafted this past year, and we were both really high on them as prospects, and they've played really, really good ball so far. And so when you look at just how their strengths match up with our weaknesses, because I haven't even mentioned Saquon, I know you did, but for me, this is just a scenario where I don't see us stopping them. And that could get out of hand by the end of the first or second quarter. That for sure, if you want to pencil in a blowout, I think it's the game we play in Philadelphia. I don't see how we have a chance based on how our current roster is constructed.
Well, I think the team that we played the following week kind of gave us a little strip of the blueprint to like look at. Jalen Hurts took 5 sacks versus Dallas. Like he takes a lot of sacks recently, despite him. Like I think Jordan Mailata's coming back this week, but even with that, he tends to stay in the pocket. He has the running ability, but doesn't escape as quick as you would like him to. So if we can get some pass rush, maybe there's a chance we get a strip fumble or something. But then you got to think of, oh, it's the Panthers pass rush, right? He had to go against Micah Parsons last week. That's why there were 5 sacks. We don't have a Micah Parsons. So I don't know about that one. After we go to Philly, we come back.
Even if you're able to generate that pressure, because you're talking about 5 sacks, they still beat Dallas 34-6.
Yeah, they beat them down.
It's still a spanking. And that's where I'm like, Philadelphia at that time of year with how raucous that crowd is going to be, I don't think it's going to be competitive.
And you mentioned they beat down Dallas, and that's a good thing you bring it up because after we go to Philly, we come back here and host Dallas. It'll probably be a Dallas home game. We talked about how the Chiefs might not travel. Those Cowboys fans are everywhere. They like infest other towns around the country because of how many fans they have. But that's another one I look at and say, I'm licking my chops with that one, honestly. If I'm like ranking which ones I think we have the best chance of winning, it's the Dallas game for sure for me. Cooper Rush and Trey Lance have both looked really bad in the times that they've been on the field. Their O-line is in shambles. Who's their Tyler Guyton, their rookie left tackle, Cooper Beebe. They are not the players that Travis Frederick or Tyron Smith were when they came into the league as young linemen. They're struggling. Their defense is still poor against the run. I know they just got Micah Parsons back, but he can't do everything himself, especially with them losing to Marvin Overshown, he was showing some good things versus Philly in terms of rushing the passer from the middle linebacker spot, but he's going to be out now. Without CeeDee Lamb there, their offense is just incredibly stagnant. I quite frankly, I have a hard time seeing how Dallas is going to make this a competitive game from their point of view. Maybe the fans will get into it because they'll have the home field advantage in our stadium. But I really, really like our matchup against Dallas, and that could be the one that sends Jerry Jones over the edge into getting rid of Mike McCarthy. Who knows? And I'll say this: if it's sunny, both teams will have to deal with the sun. All right. It won't be particularly glaring through a window or anything, but we don't have any curtains. So CD is going to have to be ready if it's a sunny day there in week 15 in Carolina.
I mean, you watch the play where the ball just goes past him. The sun's in his eyes. I get like everybody has to play with the sun, but the way that stadium's oriented, I read a really interesting thread about like the design of it. Like most stadiums, I think it's either north-south and he goes east-west, or it's vice versa. And why that's the case.
It is specifically designed to have the sun shoot in that way.
Yeah, no. And it gives it a more like a real outside feel. It's creates great photographs, but it's like, it doesn't help the players, and you like put out a good product on field. So I get that's an issue there. They're obviously going to have fans that travel well to this game. And if their defense has the Marcus Lawrence, Micah Parsons back, they have CeeDee Lamb back on offense, I can see this being a very competitive contest. Again, where I referenced the Bucs, where we host them at home 2 weeks prior to this, I think this is another winnable game. And if you can come out of the bye 2-2, maybe you take 2 to the chin against the Chiefs and the Eagles, 2 of the better teams in the National Football League.
Those are respectable losses, right?
Yeah, like even if you get blown out, like there's some of the better teams in the league, like that you can lean on the fact that you just don't have the talent or the guns or the horses that kind of keep pace in those games. Where against the Buccaneers, against the Cowboys, these are winnable games, and where they were able to eke them out against the Saints and the Giants, that's where you're hoping that they're turning a corner and they're able to find ways to win these games. So if they're 2-2, kind of heading into another home game, they're actually last home game of the year, I think that would be a good like takeaway from the year. At this point, you would be wins in. One more win would get you to 6, which would be triple of what you had last year. I don't think we're going to beat the Cardinals at home unless they have some major injuries. Jonathan Gannon has the defense playing really well, considering they don't have a lot of talent on that side of the ball. And then the offense with Kyler Murray, with Marvin Harrison Jr., with Trey McBride, with James Conner, with Drew Petzing, they're starting to find their way. And what they just did to a Jets defense that has way more talent than the Panthers, that has the making of a really, really interesting game, especially considering our run defense.
Yeah, after those 4 games, like the Chiefs, Bucks, Eagles, and Dallas, I think from there on out, we're going to be trying to play spoiler, right? I think the Cardinals absolutely have the team necessary to come into Carolina and just put a whooping on us. You know, Marvin Harrison Jr. was kind of criticized at the start of the year because he wasn't putting up Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr.'s numbers through weeks like 1 through 4. But recently, he's really found his form. He actually leads all rookies in receiving touchdowns right now with 6. He and Kyler have like finally built up that rapport, and he's a dangerous red zone weapon. Trey McBride hasn't dropped a pass this year. He's the only tight end with that amount of volume that's done so. Still no receiving touchdown, though. He has a fumble recovery one and a rushing one. Maybe against us, he can get that receiving one. Who knows? But yeah, I'm pretty worried about that offense. You know, they're another really strong rushing offense as well. James Conner is putting up numbers. The rookie Trey Benson that they have is getting involved. DeMercado is kind of like their Fozzie Whitaker scat back guy who makes some stuff happen. And then, of course, Kyler. Kyler's a really tough running back to stop, or quarterback. He moves around like a running back once he gets into the open field because he's that quick. But it's a really tough offense to handle. And yeah, that's one where I could see it getting out of hand quick if we can't stop him. And like you said, their defense is similar to ours, where they don't really have the talent level to keep up with some of these better teams. But Jonathan Gannon has them playing at a very high level. they're a team to watch out for. I think currently they're number one in the NFC West. And down the stretch, if some of these other teams are trying to catch up, like the Niners and Rams and even the Seahawks, they're going to have to be locked in because this could be like hey, this sets us apart with another win here and we win the division. So that's one that we have to watch out for down the stretch. Our final home game, week 16.
The Cardinals game, like that it's very similar to the Eagles in the standpoint of they have very, very good run games that are built kind of into their offense. And then they have guys on the perimeter that can make plays. And so it's just choose your poison at that rate. And I think that's a scenario where those offenses are able to dictate how the day is going to get played out. So unless our defense is able to generate some fumble luck, we're able to hit on a big time special teams play that kind of change the tides and put us in a situation to where we can go win at the end of the game. It's just hard for me to kind of envision a scenario where either of those are wins just based on how weak we are in stopping the run this year. So that concludes our final home game of the year. We head to Bay in week 17, and this will be interesting because if they win the first match, they're able to win a couple more of these games as they get Mike Evans back. Are they in a position to go win the division? And if so, if we don't win the first contest, can we play spoiler on the road in Tampa Bay? So I'm curious about this one. I think the way we think about this game is going to be dictated by how the first matchup goes. And we haven't seen these two teams play yet this year. So it'll be very interesting to see.
I guess the thing that I like about this matchup is Canales knows some of the tendencies just because he was there with the personnel last year. Obviously, Liam Cohen is a different play caller from him. They've done quite a bit different, I think. But he knows the players that they have and the strengths and weaknesses of said players. So that could be something that we look at. But as far as how this is going to be different from the, week 13 matchup that we have with them, it's going to be on the road, right? Like you said, this could be a game where if Tampa can string some wins together, I know they're on a bit of a skid, but if they string them together, they could be competing for the division. So this might be one where, we need to lock in and beat this division opponent before, because I'm assuming they play the Saints in week 18 because, everybody plays a division opponent. This might be one that they need. Like the week 13 one, yeah, it'd be cool if they won going into our stadium, beating Dave Canales, whatever. But this might be one that it must be a must win for them. So I think that's the interesting part there. But week 18, that's the one that I'm excited to watch. And here's why. Number one, they disrespected us in our stadium when they came here. Andy Dalton threw what felt like 17 interceptions. It was only 2. And then there's somebody on the sideline. I don't remember what Falcons player it was, but they kept saying, keep stanking or something like that to the Panthers fans and stuff like that. I don't like that disrespect. All right. I want to go into it's not the Georgia Dome anymore. Was it Mercedes-Benz Stadium? And I want to just destroy this team. But this could be another team that's like, the Bucs are nipping at our heels. We have to win this to win the division. I don't think we have the firepower to get it done, especially considering what Bijan Robinson and what Tyler Algier did to our front last time.
I think what'll be interesting about week 18, because where I talked about just prior with the Buccaneers matchup in week 17 is we could play spoiler. The Falcons could have the division locked up by week 18. And if they can't move up in the seeding because they aren't going to get the 1 or the 2 seed, that's going to belong to the NFC North and the NFC East. It's going to come down to, do they have a chance to jump the NFC West winner, whether that's the Arizona Cardinals, whether that's the San Francisco 49ers, Seahawks, Rams still have an opportunity to kind of get ahead in that division. It's a very tight division race. It's probably one of the more competitive ones, top to bottom. And so if the Falcons can't jump or move and they're already locked in as the NFC South winners, I could see them using week 18 as a bye. And it would be very reminiscent of years past when we would play the Saints and Drew Brees and they would already have the division locked up and they're playing a team the next week. We play their backups and we're able to win. I think the one that comes to mind is actually the one in 2009 where D'Angelo Williams and Jonathan Stewart had a day. We ended the year on a win. And that's a W I could see. I could see us reeling off after the bye, Tampa Bay at home, Dallas at home, and then playing a Falcons team that is already locked up its seed in the playoff picture. So that's kind of how I see the rest of the year going. For me, the Falcons, the matchup, if they decide to play everybody, is very similar to the Cardinals and the Eagles. And they already showed it against us at home, is they'll just run over us. We don't have the ability, I think, to stop the run. Hopefully DJ Wanham is able to help stop the edge like DJ Johnson and Jadeveon Clowney have. But A'Shawn Robinson and Shai Tuttle haven't proven to be the guys that can lock up the interior. And I don't know if Josie Jewell, he's going to be able to stay on the field healthy for the rest of the season. You start getting concerned about that front seven and the viability there against some of these run-heavy teams.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. Looking at the remaining schedule, I think it's interesting that we could be playing 4 of the division winners in our last 7 games. We like the Chiefs, I think we can agree are going to lock up that division. The Eagles have a good chance too if they can win tonight versus the Commanders. Arizona has a chance to go out and win the division. I think they already have a 1-game lead or 1.5 game lead. And then Tampa or Atlanta. Let's not kid ourselves. We're not winning the division. The Saints certainly aren't winning the division. So it's going to be one of those two. So we could be playing 3 or 4 playoff teams down the stretch. And those are the teams that are going to need to ramp up and get into playoff mode. So I want to see competitive football down the stretch. We haven't seen it since Steve Wilkes. And before that, like back till 2017, we haven't seen November and December competitive football. That's what I want to see the most. Even if we only get 1 or 2 more wins, that's what I would like to see. But I'm with you. I think that there are winnable games left on the schedule, particularly the 2 in Tampa and Dallas at home. We haven't won a true away game all year since the Raiders game. So it'll be interesting if we can maybe steal one from who am I kidding? It'd have to be Atlanta if they rest their starters. It's not going to be Philly. So it's going to be an interesting slate, to say the least. I alluded to it. Philly is playing Washington tonight. We actually have, at every level up until Monday Night Football, because that game stinks, we have a banger game. So tonight, Thursday Night Football, Washington at Philly. That's going to be a tough or interesting one. That's for the division lead. At the 1 p.m. schedule on Sunday, Baltimore at Pittsburgh. That's another game that's going to be for who's going to be leading the division. I think the Steelers are currently up half a game. Then 4:25, Kansas City at Buffalo. Those are always really fun games to watch. Mahomes versus Josh Allen, both top 2, top 3 QBs in the league. Can Buffalo steal one? Because they usually win them during the regular season. And then the Sunday night game will be Cincinnati at the Chargers, Joe Burrow versus Justin Herbert. So a lot of fun QBs to watch, a lot of good matchups to watch. But starting tonight, what's the one thing that you're looking for the most as Washington goes into Philly?
We've seen Jaden Daniels doing a lot of good things his rookie year. I'm curious if the Eagles take away the run game, if he's going to be able to keep throwing darts downfield to guys like Terry McLaurin, Zach Ertz, Luke McCaffrey, Olumide Zaccheaus, those guys, Noah Brown even. Can he make plays in the passing game if the Eagles make this offense one-dimensional? And if they can, I think there's a path to victory. For you, what's the one big thing that stands out?
I want to see how the Eagles offense is going to take advantage of the Commanders defense. I don't think Marshawn Lattimore is healthy to play this game.
No, he's already ruled out.
Yeah, Washington's run defense isn't strong. You alluded to the Eagles' run defense, top 10 in both yards per carry and rushing touchdowns allowed. So they're stout up front. You know, they have the big Georgia guys and everything. I want to see how the Eagles can score the ball on Washington. I think the Eagles are going to win, full transparency. I know you picked Washington when we did our takes on Tuesday, but I want to see if Hurts can kind of limit the mistakes that he had. Not mistakes, but like getting put on the ground with sacks. I think if Mailata's back, they're going to have a really good chance against a front that doesn't have a Micah Parsons. However, Dante Fowler Jr., the Mr. Pick Six, I think he has 8.5 sacks or something. I saw him on the top 5 graphic that the NFL puts out every week. He's top 5 in sacks. And Dan Quinn does know how to play against Philly. They had good matchups when he was with Dallas. So interested to see how Philly moves the ball on offense against a Washington defense that isn't as good. But I'm expecting this to be a fun game, to say the least.
Yeah, no, it should. I think there are a lot of fun matchups. This is a division game, and it's for the division. So it's exciting that we get this kind of football this late in the year on a Thursday night. But heading into the 1 p.m. slate, it's another divisional contest. And I mean, this has been a classic since the 2000s, and it's the Ravens and Steelers, and it's going to be in Pittsburgh. You have Mike Tomlin versus John Harbaugh. These two have been going at it since 2000, and I believe 8 or 9. I think, yeah, it's 2008 because Joe Flacco was a rookie then and John Harbaugh was the head coach. And like, that's just crazy. And in the case of this, Lamar Jackson's the MVP frontrunner. Russell Wilson has been cooking so far, helping the team win games, mitigating mistakes, negative play rate, which includes interception-worthy throws, fumbles, and then sacks that are deemed the quarterback's fault. Russell Wilson has the lowest negative play rate among starting quarterbacks. So if he can mitigate those mistakes against the Ravens, find the explosives against a secondary that has a lot of holes and flaws, this could be a nail biter. And I think it's definitely one to watch. There's not a lot of great games, I think, around some of these like prime matchups, but this is one for 1 o'clock. If you just wanted to watch one game, I think it's a must watch.
You don't think the Raiders and Dolphins or the Jets and the Colts is a appointment watch in the 1 o'clock window on Sunday?
I mean, yeah. Let's see Aaron Rodgers versus Anthony Richardson. I'm sure that'll create some meme-worthy plays. And Gardner Minshew and Tua, somebody's going to probably walk out of there with a concussion. But
yeah. You mentioned Russ and how well he's performing right now. You put out every week the scheme rate versus create rate. And while Russ is one of the best in the scheme, when he's trying to create, it's not the best, right? I think one of your captions was let Russ cook Arthur Smith's recipes or something like that. And I can see that being the case. Like you said, Baltimore secondary has its issues. And if you can get 1 or 2 of those 30-yard moon balls to Pickens and Mike Williams, or if another person wants to get involved, I think Pittsburgh has a chance to be competitive in this one. I don't think it's going to be the Ravens-Bengals game that we watched last week that ended 35-34 on a controversial 2-point call with the picture frame having 3 missed face masks simultaneously happening. I don't think we're going to see that. I think we'll see something like a 20-17 game or something like that.
You don't think like 30-24? I feel like both will be in the 20s, honestly. Because
all right, like 21-24 or something. Yeah, because
there you go.
I think, quite frankly, Pittsburgh's defense is going to give that offense fits. The line especially. I think they're going to mitigate Derrick Henry with the pass rush, and it's going to be a passing game with the Ravens offense. But Todd Monken is adaptable, as we've seen. I know I'm picking the Ravens in that one. I think you are as well. If what we've written down on the table sticks to Sunday. The next game, Kansas City at Buffalo. These are always classics. It seems like in the regular season, the Bills come away with it. And then in the playoffs, Mahomes just does what he needs to do. They kick it up to another gear and steal it from the Bills. What are you looking for in this one?
I'm curious to see if the Bills defense can play against better offenses. We've seen them kind of fall apart in some of these bigger games, bigger moments, and you got to help Josh Allen out. He's still, I think, without Amari Cooper and Keon Coleman, who are dealing with some injuries. And if it's just him and Khalil Shakir in terms of the passing game, then you're going to have to lean on a lot more of the running game with James Cook, get Dalton and Kincaid more involved. And that's where I think Spagnuolo can really feast. And so it's really just going to come down to, can the Bills defense make this like a punch for punch situation where you're coming down in the final drive and it's not a situation where the Chiefs have pulled away and won the game in the third.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think this is going to be a really close matchup. You talked about how Josh Allen might not have Amari Cooper. I know Keon Coleman's already been ruled out. The Chiefs on their end also don't have the most stellar weapons. You know, DeAndre Hopkins is taking a while to come into form. Xavier Worthy's usage, it seems, has been relegated with Hopkins coming along. I know Juju Smith-Schuster is healthy for this game now, so we'll have to see what Worthy and some of the tertiary guys like Mecole Hardman can do. I think this is going to come down to the wire, and the Chiefs are going to do some more of their voodoo, and it'll be like a victory formation or something, and they'll fumble the snap, or they'll like snap it over their head and it'll be a safety and the Chiefs win by 1. Something bizarre, but I think it's going to be really close. And like you said, the Chiefs' discipline at the end of the game will be the difference maker there. I hope they win, so they come into our game feeling mighty and we beat them. But go ahead. What's your stat?
So the Chiefs and the Bills, and this is from the NFL on CBS, will have the best combined record heading into a Week 11 game since the Chiefs and Rams back in
Ah,
2018. The game that ended 54-51, the first time a team has ever scored 50 or more points and lost. So maybe we get a barn burner in Buffalo. That would be crazy,
I hope
but
so.
I think while it will be a great display of what both quarterbacks do well, I don't know if we're going to see as high scoring affair. But like you said, I think we'd both love to see that if that was the case.
Yeah, 54-51. Only time a team has scored 50 in a loss. I think back to the Giants and Saints game. That was 52-49. Do you remember that one? Eli had like 6 touchdowns. I think Odell had like 3. Drew Brees had 7 in that game. That was a really tough game, or really like tough as in good game. You know what I mean? But yeah, I think this one will not be 50 points on either side. Might not be 50 combined in this game. We'll have to see. The final big game we wanted to talk about was Cincinnati going to the Chargers. Joe Burrow versus Justin Herbert. We've mentioned Lamar Jackson already, Josh Allen, Mahomes, probably the unanimous top 3 QBs. I think Herbert and Burrow round out 4 and 5 for most people's QB rankings. And it's interesting, the narrative, right? We talked about it before we hopped on. After all this, like since Herbert's been in the league, it's like Herbert hasn't had any help. The defense is bad. Receivers are dropping everything, yada, yada, yada. While Burrow's had a pretty staunch defense his first couple years, now it's flipped. Now the Chargers defense is one of the best in the league under Harbaugh and defensive coordinator Jesse Minter. And the Bengals defense stinks. He threw 5 touchdowns last week and lost. So the narratives have flipped. Who's going to take the win in this one? And what are you most looking forward to watching this fellow top 5 QB matchup?
For me, I think the Chargers are hitting their stride. The Bengals are kind of floundering a little bit, and this is a game the Bengals can't lose. And so I'm curious to see how the Chargers defense holds up against the Bengals offense, because I think the Chargers are going to be able to run on this Bengals team. I think they're going to be able to find Lad McConkey in the passing game, get Quinn Johnston involved, as we've seen over the past several weeks. And for me, I don't have a question that the Chargers are going to be able to move and score on the Bengals. It's just whether or not Joe Burrow can keep up. And right now, Jesse Minter, Jim Harbaugh have reinvented this defense from Brandon Staley, who was a defensive head coach. So it is pretty interesting to see that not adding a lot more talent, they were able to kind of create this kind of defensive force, so to speak, investing in Josie Boo. I can't talk. Josie, no.
Joey Bosa.
I don't know why I'm trying to put Josie Jewell.
Jewell.
That's where I'm getting the Josie. Yeah, I was like, I don't know why I'm saying Josie. Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack renegotiating their contracts, getting Keenan Allen and Mike Williams out of there. It seems to be the right move so far. And for me personally, Joe Hortez was my GM that I wanted the Panthers to hire. So I'm loving what he's doing over in LA and helping reinvent the culture there. I think they pull off the dub on Sunday night.
Yeah, to Dan Morgan's credit, I like a lot of what he's done this year. I think the draft was a hit, fixed the O-line, yada, yada, yada. In this game in particular, I think the thing is, number one, will T. Higgins be ready to play? And number two, Jesse Minter hasn't seen a receiver like Jamar Chase yet this year. I think Joe Burrow leads the league in passing yards. Jamar leads in receiving yards. And Trey Hendrickson, their star edge rusher, leads in sacks. All those leaders, and they still have a negative record. So you're right. This is a must win for them. And for that, I do have them winning, but they've had a lot of must win games this year and haven't come away with a ton of wins. So we will have to see. But 4 bangers that everybody should watch. And because they're each not prime time, but like in their own slot, everybody will have an opportunity to, if you have a TV or a screen in front of you. So hopefully there's some good football this week. I think we're going to move into Purrfect Takes territory. And because it's Thursday, we want to make them more bet related so we can form our perfect parlay. Last week, my half of it hit. Like the Jamar Chase stuff went. Zay Flowers fell a bit short, so the parlay crumbled.
Fell a bit short. He didn't hit on hit on yards. He didn't hit on.
He didn't hit
touchdown.
on.
Yeah,
he didn't hit on it. I was being polite, all right, because you're a Zay Flowers shareholder in fantasy football. But this week, hopefully, our combined prognostications come together. And if people tail it, again, not betting advice, hopefully you come away happy. For me, I look at the rush or the run defenses with both of these teams. The Eagles are stout. and the Commanders is not very stout. So I think at least 3 different players are going to have rushing touchdowns in this game. I'm going to go Hurts because if they get to that 1 yard line, Saquon's not touching the ball. It's a tush push. I'm going to go Saquon just because he's him. We saw the backwards hurdle a couple weeks ago. We know what he can do. And I'm going to go Brian Robinson. He's been out of the lineup the past couple weeks. He's healthy for this game. He's refreshed. And when they get into that red zone and when the field starts to shrink, that's where he seems to thrive carrying the ball. I think all 3 of those guys tote the rock into the end zone. And I wouldn't be surprised if a guy like Eckler gets one as well. Jaden Daniels, we know how he is as a runner. Or if Will Shipley comes in garbage time for the Eagles and gets one. So I'm expecting a lot of rushing production as far as touchdowns in this game.
So that is your part of the perfect parlay. So if you want to follow Jacob, he hit on Chase last week.
I'm 1-0.
Hot hands.
Yeah.
He's 1-0 with our sides of the perfect parlay. For me, I'm going to be a little bit safer. I do think there's going to be a lot of rushing touchdowns. So I don't want to include a anytime touchdown with this guy, but I'm going to kind of keep it in theme with last week. I thought Zay Flowers would go off for the Ravens. I think Devontae Smith is going to go off. Last year, he had at least 7 receptions in both contests against the Commanders, and he went over 75 yards in both contests as well. So when you look at alternative yards, when you look at alternative receptions, I think 6+ receptions, 70+ yards. He hits on both tonight. I think it's his birthday. So maybe throw an anytime touchdown there if you're looking to make a modification. But for the sake of this perfect parlay, it's going to be a Saquon touchdown, a Jalen Hurts touchdown, a Brian Robinson touchdown, and then Devontae Smith, 6+ receptions and 70+ receiving yards. You put all those together, you throw $20 on it, you get about $400. So they're around that range. Again, isn't betting advice. Tail us if you want to. Pick it if you want to as well. We're not going to be offended either way. The only thing I would say to potentially look out for with this matchup is that I would be very interested, like you said, in some of those tertiary running backs, especially for the Commanders. Maybe take him McNichols. I could see him being like a goal line on the 1 yard line, having a trick play, getting the ball there. That's where I think you can maybe get an edge or an angle as well. Now, we both disagreed on who's going to win this game, so we aren't putting money line or the spread on this. I think you took an alternative spread for the Eagles. I'm taking money line for the Commanders. So they are not a part of this perfect parlay. And at this point, I'm just rambling. But yeah, that's about kind of the gist of where we're at.
For sure. A lot of Alabama in that parlay, so certainly couldn't go wrong there. Penn State as well with Saquon. I think that's pertinent given we got the second college football playoff rankings on Tuesday. Both Alabama and Penn State were in the top 12 there. It's going to be really interesting. I know we didn't talk about draft picks today because we had a lot to cover Panthers-wise, but with the new 12-team parlay, 12-team playoff bracket, there's going to be some teams left out. Georgia wasn't in this one just because they have to have the group of 5 team in as that 12th spot. So it kicked Georgia out. So if there are teams that get one or more losses down the stretch, like Georgia and Tennessee play this week, if Ole Miss gets another loss, Alabama, Indiana, and Ohio State have to play each other again, it's going to be really interesting. I'm excited to see how the 12-team college football playoff bracket works out. But I think that's going to do it for us. For myself, for Steven, we have been Purrfect Takes. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it. We're on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And I would say keep pounding, but we don't have a game this week. So I guess everybody just have a good weekend and look forward to the good football.